Hello students, welcome to our lesson 2, the Opium Wars. In today's lesson, we'll look at GS textbook pages 32-33, and before that, we'll recap what we have done in the last lesson. Now, there's a PowerPoint in Chinese which is attached for your reference. It talks about the Opium Wars, so I want all students to go through the PowerPoint. And there's also a video in English which tells you the history of Opium Wars. For today, your homework will be GS workbook pages 14 and 15. Before we proceed to the next two pages, let's recap what is Opium War and how it started and how it affected a lot of people in China. As you can see in the pictures, in the early 19th century, the Qing government, they opened a part of its trade foreign merchants. That means they started doing trade with people from European countries. And because there was a lot of demand for Chinese tea, silk, and Chinese other artifacts in European countries. And at the same time, the European people, the Europeans, they thought that, they can introduce something called opium to the Chinese people. Now, the way they introduced opium in the Chinese market is they introduced it as a medicine. Opium is also a medicine, but if you take opium for a very long period of time, it is basically a drug. You can get addicted to it and it can affect your mental, emotional, physical health. And you come to a point where the addiction is so severe that people just lose everything just to get a little bit of opium. So when the Chinese people started taking opium for a very long period of time, their health became worse and they became addicted to it, as you can see in the picture down. But there are two pictures, and look at the picture on the right where they're really poor. Why poor? Because they had to sell everything to get this drug. It's like drug addiction. People taking opium, they did not have any energy in productive activities, like they did not go to work, they did not like to do anything, work in the fields, work outside, because they have that drowsy feeling when you take all these drugs. And at the same time, they needed a lot of money to support this opium addiction. Therefore, people in the society, they engaged in illegal activities. Sorry for the ring. They started engaging in illegal activities. That means they started stealing, taking money from illegal businesses. And because of this, it caused a lot of social problems in China. Okay? And since China bought a lot of opium from Britain, there was a lot of money going out from China, and the government was in great financial difficulty. After a certain time, the Chinese government started realizing that this is not working well. They are losing people, they are losing money. The entire Chinese generation has become addicted to opium, and which is not a very good sign. It's not a good sign for a nation. So what happened is, as you can see in the picture, like picture number 1 is the center picture where wise officials, they suggested a ban on opium smoking because it was affecting the society, right? So the Qing government, they sent someone called Lin Zhishu to Guangzhou to enforce the ban. Now what he did was, he forced the British merchants to hand over the opium in Guangzhou, and he destroyed it at the beach in Human. So because of this, Britain was very angry and it attacked China. Now when it attacked China, of course Britain was a very powerful country, and these Chinese armies, they had poor weapons and they were defeated. Because of this, the China lost the war, Britain won the war, and that's how the Chinese government was forced to ask for peace, and that is when the Treaty of Nanjing was signed, right? And so now here you have to pay attention to this one. Picture number 7, you see the Chinese and the Europeans. They're signing a treaty called Treaty of Nanjing. Now the Chinese government lost the war and they were forced to sign this treaty. And this treaty is called unequal treaties. That means that it is, of course, it's not equal, but the Chinese government has to give certain parts of China, that's Hong Kong and few other places, to the British government, plus they had to also give a lot of silver and to the European government. So it's kind of unequal treaties. If the Qing government had not agreed to sign these unequal treaties, what do you think would have happened? China knows it's not fair. They started the war because the British people, they started exporting opium to China, and because of that the people got addicted, and that's the reason they had to stop the opium being sold in their country, which the Britishers did not like, and they started the war. However, China lost the war. Now, say for example, if the Chinese government did not sign this treaty, then the Britain might send more troops to Hong Kong. And since the military facilities of China were backward at that time, it was very likely that the Qing government might lose the war. And if that really happened, the government might have to bear more losses. So that's the reason the Qing government agreed to sign this Treaty of Nanjing, which is like unequal treaties. Influence of the Opium Wars. In the pictures, you can see how it all started. Now look at some historical facts about the invasion of China by the Western countries. Picture number 1. The British fleet attacked Guangzhou Bay. Now, by this time, we know why did the British fleet attack Guangzhou Bay? Because most of the opium was destroyed at the beach in Guangzhou Bay. And number 2, the Allied forces. Now, the countries that are taking part are Britain and France, and they invaded Beijing and burnt Yuan. Number 3, the British Army stationed at the northern part of Kowloon Peninsula in Hong Kong. That's the reason we have a lot of British influence in Hong Kong. And it leased the new territories and put up a sign at the boundary. Now, Britain leased the area north of Boundary Street and south of Shenzhen River from China and named this place the New Territories. Now, it is Kowloon. According to the Treaty of Beijing, China leased the Kowloon Peninsula north of the Boundary Street to Britain. Now, do you know where Boundary Street is in Hong Kong? Find out. The two people that you see shaking hands in the picture are, the lady on your left is Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of Britain at that time, and Zhao Xiang, the Premier of China at that time on your right. In the background, we can also see Geoffrey Howe, the Foreign Secretary of Britain at the time of Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping, he's the person in the center. So in 1984, the Chinese government talked with the British government on the grounds of protecting the national unity and territorial integrity. They signed the Sino-British Joint Declaration, and both parties agreed that China would resume the reign over Hong Kong on 1st July 1997 and set up the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region at the same time.